Greetings and welcome to the Transform Podcast. This is episode 7, and it is Thursday, November 4th, and I'm your host, Christopher Anastasio. So welcome back to the podcast, guys. Hopefully you got a chance to listen to the episode that published a couple days ago on Facebook's impact on your business. Actually kind of deviated from what would normally be a certain progression of topics that we like to cover, that have some logical flow to them, I guess you could say. And we may do this more in the future, but this was more of a reaction episode, this last one, episode 6, to some of the recent news about Facebook and the news that day about their facial recognition program and so forth. So that brings us today to episode 7, where we just want to briefly kind of talk to you guys about the importance of video content, but more specifically the importance of captioning your video content. Okay, something you may already be doing, which is great. I think this episode, if you listen to it then, will reinforce why you're doing that and why that's a good thing. If you're not doing it, hopefully by the time we're done, you'll be convinced that you need to do it. Okay. But what I want to do, and again, like I said, it's not going to be a super long episode. We just really want to cover these two major areas, and one sort of flows into the other, because if you're not doing video content at all, I want to talk briefly about why that's so important to revisit that, and why it is such a critical piece of your content strategy for your business. And then we'll flow into the captioning. So let's start talking, guys, a little bit about video content. Now, backing up for a second, there's really only three ways that you're going to communicate your message, right? You're going to either use text, like blog posts, articles, written posts that you put into your news feed on various platforms, things like that. Audio, okay, so, like I'm doing this podcast right now, so you may have audio clips, where you're going voice only. You're doing that probably at least in part because people are multitasking these days and they want to listen to you while they do the laundry or do the dishes or whatever. Okay, so you have text, you have audio, and then you have video. Okay, and obviously we all know what that is and what that's going to look like in terms of what format your content's going to take. But what's worth lingering on about video is why it's so good compared to the other two. Okay, why is video such an important strategy to employ for getting your content out there? Now, if you are stopping right there and saying, Chris, I'm not good on camera, I'm not comfortable in front of the camera, I have a problem with doing video and so forth, I get it, totally understood. It's natural, it's normal, you're in the majority, I would say, versus the minority if you feel that way about doing video content. But unless it's just an absolute no-go, it's something that is worth practicing, working at, trying to get better at, so on and so forth. Okay? So even if it means, sometimes setting up the camera but maybe not turning it on and just practicing for a while, or just recording videos knowing you're going to delete them and throw them away just to get the repetition and the practice and so forth. However you've got to approach it, it's worth revisiting whether video should be in your strategy or not. So just going through a couple reasons, guys. As I like to do for these shows, I'll reference, various resources or authorities and so forth to kind of back up what we're asserting here. And just kind of browsing through later.com, later.com on their blog, they had an article published earlier this summer about why video was such a better strategy for engagement. And just going through some of the reasons that they point out, the biggest reason, the one you're going to hear basically all the time, is that it just gets more engagement. It's more exposed on the platform, and it gets more engagement. So platforms know that people prefer watching video, and that's the preferred method for consuming content, so they prioritize it. So those platforms push that video content, further up the ranking, further up the organic reach, if you will, and show it to more users because it's a preferred medium. Okay, so basically those algorithms are prioritizing it, and one great example of that, just using Twitter as an example, tweets that have video get 10 times more engagement than any other kind of tweet. So if that tells you anything, I mean, that's a huge stat right there. Instagram, in competition with TikTok and YouTube Shorts, they have heavily promoted Instagram Reels as probably the best way, not probably, but the best way to get exposure on their platform. And of course, Reels are videos. Okay, so even Pinterest getting in on this with video pins. Where you're more likely to catch somebody's eye as they're scrolling through Pinterest because you've got a video pin playing. Okay, so engagement is a huge one. Okay, now sort of secondary to that but related, it's growing in popularity. So it's not even like it's reached some kind of zenith and it's plateaued here. I mean, it's actually getting more and more and more popular. Okay, so later cites a study back in 2018 showed 54% of consumers wanted to see more video. Okay, and since then, numbers have just gone up. So in 2019, the average amount of time somebody watched online videos in a week was 6 hours and 48 minutes, which was up almost 60% from 2016. Okay, so it's just, I mean, you throw the pandemic in there and the amount of time people had where they were working at home or lounging at home or whatever the case may be, it just made it even more of a lurch forward in terms of how popular that type of content is. Okay, so we talked about the popularity. Okay, so now let's talk for a second about how long the shelf life of video is online. And the bottom line is, it's just got a longer shelf life. It just sticks around for a longer period of time. Okay, and in part because of some of the other reasons I cited. If it's getting more engagement, more likes, more shares, more eyeballs, it's going to hang in there in terms of being accessible through the algorithm and how it gets shown to visitors. It's going to hang in there longer and just have a more lengthy period of time that it remains relevant and displayed to users who come onto the platform. Okay. So fourth reason for video content, it is very appealing to Generation Z. Okay, so Generation Z, obviously the most connected to the internet than any other generation. They basically grew up on YouTube and watching video on their smartphones and on online platforms and so forth. So, and even the later cites here a study of millennials and Gen Z saying 50% of them said they could not live without video in their daily lives. So it just kind of shows you guys, I mean, if you need any further evidence that the youth are in that space of consuming video content, I mean, just look at TikTok, okay? 35% of their 800 million users are in that demographic, okay? And I mean, just the explosion of TikTok's user base, I mean, I forget the exact numbers, but how quickly it reached, I believe, 1 billion users. I'm just going to do some live research here for you guys. Let's do TikTok users. So it has over 1 billion users now, and it reached that number in late September. Okay, so I'm just checking out some official stats here. So TikTok last summer in 2020 had 700 million, and by late this summer had 1 billion users. So that growth rate, if I remember correctly, I did see a stat on this at one point, much faster to 1 billion than Instagram. And Instagram, I believe, was the previous champ when it came to reaching how fast they reached 1 billion users. So, reason number 5, and I think this is a super important one. In fact, this might be the most important one for a small business like yourself, is the fact that video can be repurposed across many platforms. So if you create a video, okay, and I mean my virtual mentor Gary Vee talks about this all the time. If you create a video of, let's just say a 10-minute video. Well, first of all, you probably have now anywhere from 2 to 5 or 6 smaller videos, right? You can take that 10-minute video, chop it up into pieces, roll it out slowly in a series, or use it, if it's segmented naturally, you can actually use a shorter piece of the video all by itself in a certain context. So just the video alone can be repurposed into multiple videos. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you can strip off the audio, and now you have audio content that can be put into a podcast or put onto, other platforms where audio may be a little more friendly. Okay, and then you can take the audio from the video and you can transcribe it into text, and now you have blog posts or mini blog posts or small little articles that you can post on various platforms. You can chop it up into tiny pieces. Use it on Twitter. You can break it up into slightly larger chunks. Use it on, let's say, your Facebook feed or your LinkedIn feed. So creating one video spawns the most amount of content that can be repurposed. And I'm going to stop here with the sixth reason, and then we'll switch over to captioning here in a moment, and then wrap this up. But a sixth reason is it's just a more personable way that you engage with your audience. So when your audience sees your face, and this is kind of proven, I mean that when a face appears in a post or in an ad or whatnot, it always gets more engagement than if there's no face. Okay, that's kind of, at this point there's enough data to support that if you're going to put a post up or put a video up, or put an ad up, you probably want to put your face or some kind of face in it to create a greater connection with the audience. So when you put your face specifically in a video, I mean, even with that vulnerability of recording yourself and maybe you're not so comfortable with it, it's a highly personable way to engage with your audience. So it's just going to give you more opportunity, more than likely, to make more sales, to make more connections, to make more value, sort of exchanges with people who begin to know, like, and trust you, and so on and so forth. So those are just 6 quick reasons, guys, that you got to kind of take a hard look at video if you're not doing it. Now, if you're already doing it, all of that was repetitive for you, and you're like, hey, I got it, Chris, I'm already doing this stuff. Okay. So then in that case, let's move over to captioning. So captioning your videos is super, super, super important. Okay. It's super important because of one single number. 75% of people watch mobile videos on mute. Okay, so first of all, that might make you feel better when you go to make video content. Your voice isn't even going to be heard. Okay, but the reasons for that 75%, if you think about it, are pretty understandable. I mean, number one, you might be at work in a meeting. That's not a great time to be watching video on your smartphone, but hey, people do it, right? So they do that. Phone's on mute. They can read what's being said. Number two, they might be in like a public transportation setting. They don't have their headphones or whatever. They want to go ahead and watch a video, but they can't listen to it out loud, so they're reading it. Okay? Maybe they're at home, spouse is watching a television show, they're sitting next to the spouse, watching the video, they're reading the captions. And the reasons and possibilities go on and on and on. But the bottom line is that for all those reasons, let's go to the most obvious reason that's good to caption your video, and that is your audience, in some cases, may be hearing impaired. They can't hear what you're saying regardless, whether they have the volume on or not. And so reading your video is the only way that they're going to get the context from it. So when you caption your videos, or when you think about captioning your videos, I think you have to make a very obvious decision that you're gonna make it a habit. You're basically gonna make it part of your video production to go ahead and caption it. You're always doing the two together. You're always putting those two things together as a priority to make sure that that every video is accessible to every viewer. Okay, especially considering that so many actually watch these videos on mute. Now, as an example, guys, so the 75% is kind of an average. What's interesting is how it breaks out. 85% of millennials will watch a video on mute versus 64% for Generation X. So, a little bit of a difference there, but the trend is obviously clear, and it creates, it creates an average of 75%. Okay, so, one of the things that as I was kind of poking around doing some research for this episode, one of the things you come across is this prevalence now of how people watch television but have their smartphone accessible to them. And in so many cases, what we're seeing now is instead of the TV as the focal point and your smartphone is there on backup, It's really the smartphone that's being paid attention to, and the TV is on backup. So this is one of these classic scenarios where video content's being consumed. It's very useful to have it captioned because the TV is on, and that probably is creating the volume. So the person's probably reading, quote unquote, the video that they're watching on their smartphone. And so you're just, by captioning, you're flowing with that cultural shift. Okay, you're being part of that cultural shift in terms of the way people watch TV and handle their smartphones. Okay, so and again, this holds up across all age groups. Again, you're going to see a little fluctuation. You're going to see a little fluctuation across different demographics, but the bottom line is it's here to stay. I believe it's a trend that holds up. It's not a fad. It's not going to go away. It's something that you guys should absolutely consider doing and incorporate into your strategy. So, that being said, guys, in terms of tools to caption your videos, I would say, a quick Google search will bring up some possibilities for you, whether you find free ones or paid ones. I'm not endorsing any of these. We don't have any affiliate relationship with any of these, but a quick search before I came online with you guys for this podcast, you can check out products or apps like Mix Captions. That's all one word. Mix Captions is a possibility. Amara, A-M-A-R-A, has some web-based options for helping you create captions, but they don't necessarily translate to mobile. So this would be more if you're worried about desktop viewing. Zubtitle, Z-U-B-T-I-T-L-E, but that is a subscription service that's anywhere from $19 to $49 a month. Capwing, K-A-P-W-I-N-G, where it has a free and a paid option. The free is pretty limited. But, the bottom line is, I'm just reading you guys a few of these. I think what you really want to do is go out there, do a little research, play around if you can play around with something. Let's say they have a free option or they let you sample one video and you can kind of see how it comes out. If you really want your captions to be absolutely perfect, just prepare. You're probably going to pay for it. If you're okay with there being a little bit of, a little bit of give and take in there, then you can go ahead and look at some free options that are going to be available to you as well. Okay, guys, so anyway, if you take anything away from this video, it's number one. If you take anything away from this podcast, number one, you got to consider video if you're not doing it already. If you are, that's great. Once you have that taken care of, if you're not captioning your videos, you got to get that taken care of. And you got to look very, very closely at making sure that you can appeal to the widest audience possible that can not only view your video but can also read what's being said if they cannot hear it or they're not able to turn on the volume. Okay, guys, so we're going to wrap up here. Got another sub 20-minute episode in, so it should be very digestible. Of course, if you guys have any questions about video or captioning or whatever, we're here. Let us know. Send us a note. Shoot us a message on social media. Bottom line is we will be talking a lot about video. We'll talk about strategy. We'll go into different tactics. We'll definitely be coming back to that subject quite a bit on the podcast here. But this was kind of a marker in the sand, line in the sand, to say, hey, you got to look at video. You got to look at captions. Okay, guys, so once again, Christopher Anastasio, Transform Podcast. Super excited to connect with you guys if you have any questions on this or any other episode that we've published so far. So we really appreciate the support. Like it, share it, subscribe to it. Come visit us over on our Facebook and LinkedIn pages. You can drop us a note there or just follow along with us. Want to be a resource to you, value added, that sort of thing. But thanks again for listening, guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.